Hi, welcome back, Getaway participants 2020. I'm with James Bosch, licensed and family marriage therapist. Welcome back, James.
Hello, Daniel. Hello, Getaway.
Great. Today's video is going to be focused on the spouses of burn survivors. So I have a few questions for you, James, so we'll just get right into it. The first question is, what are some concerns and comments that you've heard from spouses of burn survivors during the healing journey?
Well, I mean, this is such a important topic, and I'm so glad that the Getaway is made for families and spouses and different, so the spouses can get their healing. So just like with the parents, and the spouses are often experiencing a lot of secondary trauma themselves. So the number one thing is to attend to your own trauma of the injury. And secondary trauma just means that you didn't have the accident yourself, but you witnessed it, or you're witnessing the suffering of your loved one, and you're having the same type of trauma symptoms, like, in your body. Moodiness, tearfulness, being hyper alert, being avoidant of thinking and talking about things, really just being activated. And so the number one thing is what happens with the burn injury of spouses, like the focus all goes to the spouse. Everything goes to whoever the person in the relationship. Spouse meaning it could be your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever the partner is in the union of the relationship. And all the focus goes over there, and then the partner is like attending, dealing with doctors, getting information. They're like hungry, information seeking, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to deal with not just the injury, but maybe there's kids at home, maybe there's jobs to go to, maybe there's households to run. Of course there is, right? Pets that need to be sitted and whatever. So all this stuff and all this like stuff to do. And then what happens is that eventually the spouse is so focused on just business and so focused on the loved one that they don't realize that they have needs too, and they often feel guilty asking for help, or guilty saying they have needs because look at all this that they're going through. Or I just can't think about, like a lot of common thing I'll say is, well, you need to take care of yourself. You need to like go for a walk, or you need to go do some yoga, or you need to go have lunch with a friend, or whatever, what do you mean? I have this to do, this to do, this to do, this, like what, like it's just like you're talking a different language, right? So I think here is so important. Peer support is so important. Getting spouses to be able to talk to other spouses and learn their strategies, and learn that it's okay to ask for help and do your own healing. I mean, think about it. I mean, there's a lot of grief, and this is a part that's often not talked about. There's a lot of grief when someone is injured so poorly that your whole world is turned upside down, financially, plans, maybe that burn injured person, the intimacy leaves the relationship because they either can't become intimate because of their treatment or their pain meds or whatever, or there's alterations in visual, there's the grief of, oh, I married this person, now they look like this. I'm not supposed to feel bad that bothers me, because look what they're going through. There's so many things of like grief that the spouse needs to reconcile with, that they don't feel they're allowed to because it feels selfish, right? And so I think that that's an important point, that you can't talk about these things in front of your burn survivor partner. You have to talk about these things either with other spouses, partners, or with a therapist, or in a group, because there's too much loaded pressure and then I think the important part too is a lot of relationships don't survive a large burn injury. Unfortunately, statistically aren't in their favor. It's just the stress of it, all those altercations I just talked about. but a lot really do. And the ones that do are the ones that when both partners see that they have individual work to do around what happened, they get their individual help, and then they also utilize like couples counseling or couples groups or ministry if they're in a religion or whatever, you know, like they go and they get support, like, okay, this really big thing just ripped our world apart, and now we need a little help getting back together because we're both different people now.
Absolutely. And I think for me, what I think I really don't hear a lot about is we talk about intimacy when we talk about spouses, we talk about the relationship dynamics changing, right? Where there's more power, quote unquote, power for now the caregiver because they're in charge of all these other things and the dependency the survivor has. But what we don't really talk about is the most humanistic quality that we all have, is that the fear that your loved one, the spouse that you married, could have died, and
There-
that trauma,
Mentality.
that does to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, could have died, the terror, that's often in the terror of that, right? And I something you just sparked on is also is that oh, I just lost it. It was really good, Daniel, though. Is like coming back together, and it was such a good point that I'm sure you'll come up with it in your groups. Uh,
Sounds good. Well, maybe this will spark your remembrance when we
I
ask you this question.
I got it. Okay.
Okay.
So it's that when one person in the, and I'm speaking mostly to stereotypically male, you know, heterosexual male rolled men, is that typically they have a hard time accepting that they're not the ones managing the family anymore, bringing all the money in, making the big decisions for the family, if that's the role, like one of those, kind of those traditional marriage, male-female marriage roles. It could be same-sex dynamic too. But the one that, the injured person that lost that role feels often this like shame that's not really grounded on anything but cultural norms, because they're not talking about it, and the other person's necessarily not feeling it, but they just feel this like defeatism that they can't be this thing anymore. And that's often the work of accepting, changing your role, changing what you do in the family. And I think that shame is a big part of that. There is in the power dynamics, the role switches. And let's just be real too, the financial disaster of what happens to the family many times, because usually one person loses a job or goes on some not very good disability check, and the other person can't work as much either because they're taking care of things. So that's often the stress of just finances puts such a strain on the marriage.
There's so many things I think we can talk about when it comes to this topic. But as we start to wrap up, James, what are some tips that you have for the spouse in the healing journey, for their journey, and how to support the survivor?
Number one, make time for yourself with friends outside of the burn relationship. You need breaks. You need to get some different perspective and some different thoughts in your head than just dealing always focused on. And you know what? Your loved one needs it too. And then they need a break too. They need to do their own thing. And also utilizing the family support groups, either through Elise Ann Rouge or Phoenix Society or whatever. And also finding a daily practice that's just yours, whether it's a walk, whether it's a time a day you take your coffee or tea and go sit outside and meditate or pray, whether it's an actual like a yoga practice, some daily ritual that doesn't involve anything to do with managing anything related to the burn, and that attends to your soul.
Great tips from a great therapist. James, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing the perspective of the spouse. For more information on all AARBF events, please go to our website at www.aarbf.org. We thank you, James, for being a part of today's episode on the spouse. We look forward to talking to you guys more. Thanks, guys.